Good morning, Wrestling Inc. Welcome back to welcome to the first ever Wrestling Inc. Daily live here over on the Wrestling Inc. YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, all of it. We are here live right now. If you're listening in audio form, we got an interview coming up here for you later. And if you're watching us live right now, you can go check out that interview nearly after the show is done. You know, we'll get to all that. There's a lot to explain here. We're live for the first time ever. I'm the Wrestling Inc. managing editor, Nick Hausman. Hi, everybody. You've probably heard me in your ear holes for a while now, and now you can see me. I guess I don't know. You can already see me before me, but you know who I'm with now because you can see me. It's Michael Wiseman. Michael, welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
Hi, Nick. It's good to see you.
I feel so flustered. You know, like I'm so not used to being live on the video waves here over at Wrestling Inc. But we'll see how it goes. Yeah, look, we got a chat room going on here right now. So if you're out there and you're like watching the show and you want to comment or you want to say something stupid, whatever, I really don't care. It's anything goes here at the Daily. Just be respectful. That's all I ask. Alex A. Daily. We'll see how it goes. Jamie Koharski. You both look exactly as I imagined. Wow.
Is that a compliment? I think that's that's a good thing, right? We look how we imagine we would look.
Here's the thing, though. I bet you didn't imagine this. I sometimes play a kazoo on the show. I bet you didn't know. It's green.
And the first flub of the video era here on the.
It's a very large kazoo. It's completely the same color as the green screen.
That's amazing.
All right.
Special effects, guys. We're doing it all on this debut episode of the video version of the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
I will get you eventually. Hey, this is fun, everybody. I'm really excited about this. We got a great show for you. If it's your first time catching us live or whatever, you've never heard of the Wrestling Inc. Daily, we've been around since January of, I think, 2019. I think it's been a while now. You know, we're over on all the major podcast platforms. Every day we talk the news of the day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, noon Eastern, which we're going to start doing here. Michael's on Mondays. We got guests, co-hosts, or other co-hosts throughout the week. And you know what? We are going to have a big interview here on the show later as well. But before we get to all that, I want to start the show off by congratulating former WWE superstar Gangrel, who announced via Instagram on Sunday that he proposed to his girlfriend while they were watching a game at Yankee Stadium. She said yes. That's good. Congratulations to Gangrel.
Love is in the air. It's May. Spring flowers.
Yes. And also, we want to send our best out to EC3, who announced over the weekend that he's now home resting and preparing for the May 27th show when he faces Matt Cardona at Free the Narrative, his own event that he's running. So awesome news for Gangrel. Awesome news for EC3. That's just great news to start the week, you know?
Happy for them both, man. And especially EC3 right now, going through what he went through after all of that. So happy to hear he's on the up and up and looking forward to seeing him back in the ring, dude. Like, he's going to do some amazing stuff now that he's kind of out from that WWE umbrella.
Yeah, man. And like this Free the Narrative thing is really cool. It's like its own show. And, you know, he said there's no 3-letter companies that are going to have any insight in on it or anything like that or input. So he's going into the world of promoting right now. And I think it's just very exciting. So very good news for Gangrel and EC3 both. Well, on this show here today, we are about to dive into the news of the past weekend. Then if you're listening in audio form, you're going to hear my conversation with Double J Jeff Jarrett. If you're watching in video form, after we wrap up here, you can go over to the YouTube channel. You can go find Jeff Jarrett there. So over in video form, the show's in 2 parts. But if you subscribe to the Wrestling Inc. Daily in audio form, you get the whole thing, one big chunk. And then after we hear from Jeff, and at the end of this stream here right now, we're going to dive into the mailbag, and we're going to look at who you all would like to see John Cena face at SummerSlam this year if he is to come back. But let's get to it here, everybody. News you can use. Wait, we lost Michael. What the hell? Oh, my God. This is live. I was about to jump into it. We were going to – oh, Michael's back. 1 second. What happened, Michael?
Oh, Chrome, baby. Chrome. We had to just test the waters here a little bit. Let's keep it going, though. News we can use. It was so bruise-worthy news, you lost me.
I broke your stream. Well, yeah, you know, Ricky Zaldivar, he brings it up here over in the comment section right now. Yeah, we're going to start with the breaking news of today. AEW, they've announced that they're going to be returning to live touring with upcoming Dynamite tapings on the road. They're going to run Dynamite on July 7th from the James L. Knight Center in Miami, July 14th from the HEB Center in Cedar Park, Texas, and July 21st from the Curtis Colwell Center in Garland, Texas. Now, tickets for all 3 Dynamite shows are going to go on sale this Friday. They're going to start at $30. Each event is going to be held in compliance, obviously, with all the COVID-19 protocols. AEW has also announced 2 rescheduled live event dates for St. Louis, Missouri, and New Orleans. The July 23rd taping at the Chavez Arena in St. Louis will now take place on Friday, November 5th, and will be a TV taping to air on TNT, but not a Dynamite show. The event scheduled for the Uno Lakefront Arena in New Orleans now take place on Wednesday, January 12th, 2022, and that will be a Dynamite taping. So, bottom line, AEW back on the road, Michael, and I'm super curious about this TV taping for TNT that is not going to be a Dynamite taping.
It's like, are we talking about a backdoor pilot? If you remember Smackdown, I know we're going to get to Smackdown here a little bit. Like, that was a backdoor pilot back in the day that was taped in between some Raws and then later aired on UPN, excuse me. So I'm very curious to see what they're doing with that. I mean, they've been kind of plugging that they might get some more stuff on TNT or the networks here in the near future.
Yeah, no. Well, they've definitely got the second show that's going to be coming out this year. Tony Khan has confirmed that that's going to be happening. So I would imagine that's what this is going to be here. This is going to be whatever the second AEW show is working right now. And they've said it's not going to be AEW Dark. I would imagine that means it's not going to be AEW Dark Elevation either. So I don't know what this second show is going to be. But, I think that's what this is going to be a taping for right here.
Yeah, I think so too. But you look at the bigger picture here too, Nick, like they're out there, they're doing their thing, right? And I know we've heard some rumors from Stanford about when they want to get back to doing live broadcast again, or live touring events, I should say again. I think it's interesting. Tony Khan said he's going to get out there first. We're going to have Double or Nothing, and then, hey, we're back at it. And I have to imagine that there have been some reactions to this news up in Stanford this morning.
Yeah, no, well, that's the thing is like, I almost wonder, is it good or bad that AEW is doing this first? Like, it's bad because, like, you want to be the first, company out there, performing in front of fans and stuff, but it's kind of maybe good because, like, do you really want to be the canary in the coal mine either, right? Do you want to be the first one going out there and doing this kind of stuff? And, I know there's a lot of concerts and sporting events that are already kind of making waves in this area as well, but they'll be the first in the pro wrestling space. If anything goes wrong, it'll be on them, and AEW, WWE can kind of take notes from there.
It's interesting because of that point, like WWE can now kind of point the finger back at AEW and say, hey, we're not the first one to do it. The WrestleMania event, listen, they did the exact same thing for the Super Bowl or a similar setup back in January. So WWE was the first kind of big wrestling promotion to do that, but they weren't the first to do that kind of live show. And it would be really interesting to say, hey, WWE opens back up in SummerSlam or up in August. Man, they can point back and say, Tony Khan, AEW, they've been doing it for months now. Nothing abnormal at this point. But also keep in mind, too, that like Tony Khan, AEW, they're doing the smaller shows, right? They're not doing the same packed out arenas that we're going to see from WWE drawing 20,000 people. I know a lot of these shows are going to be, how many people are we talking? Like 2,000, 3,000 fans?
See, that's the thing is these aren't big arenas, right?
Right?
These aren't in Dallas. These aren't in Austin. And by the way, I think it's interesting they picked Texas where there's kind of they opened up very early and, there's really them in Florida, the two places they're running, really not a whole lot of guardrails in place there. But that being said, like, yeah, they didn't even pick, Dallas or Austin proper. They're kind of like in the outskirts. So
sure.
I'm thinking Windy City Fieldhouse type deal, Chicago. Yeah, I'm thinking 25 to 5,000 person range for these kind of venues would be my guess. Yeah.
And I think we also have to keep in mind too here, talking about AEW and going back on tour, like AEW is drawing their revenues from a very different source a lot of times than WWE is right now. WWE is heavily focused on the major TV partnerships, the merchandising, the cross promotion, all of that stuff that they do week in and week out as a capital C corporation. AEW has some of that, especially in their relationship with, Turner and all that jazz, but getting tickets and getting back in front of live fans, I would imagine, is a much bigger part of what they need to do. Pay-per-view sales have been great for them, but getting back out there, they need that a little bit more, I think, than WWE does at this point, because they're not building a Thunderdome, right? They got to do these live shows in some capacity. So I hope it goes well. And, things are opening back up, so I can't hold it against them for going after the money as things kind of return to normal, the new normal in America.
Sure, man, I'm double vaxxed. I'm ready to go, man. I got my second dose on Friday, come 11 days from now, man. I'm hitting Dave and Buster's, man. I'm
Dave and Buster's. No.
Dude, no, seriously. The first place, it's actually not Dave and Buster's. I'm going to FTW, which is like Dave and Buster's, but it's like a nicer, bougier Dave and Buster's here in Chicago. So whatever. That's
where you go. When you get double vax, you go to the bougie Dave and Buster's. You've made it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna hit a barcade. I'm gonna go to Navy Pier. I'm gonna sit at Bubba Gump's. I'm gonna sit at the bar. I'm gonna watch Forrest Gump all
Hell
day.
yeah.
Anyway.
Did you feel it though? Like, random aside here, you got that second vax, you go out in public again, and that fear before people get near you, you're like, oh God, get out of my bubble. And there's a little sense of relief that kind of comes over you with it, right?
Dude, seriously. And it does seem, pretty quickly like things are changing right now, and that a lot of the things we haven't been able to do, we are going to be able to do, which is great. Now, on that note, I want to note here, the Observer saying that this week's AEW Dynamite that's going to be held in front of live crowd is not selling well. So while the show featuring several big matches like Moxley versus Nagata for the IWGP US title, Miro versus Darby Allin for the TNT title, it was noted that fans are most likely are going to be more eager to attend the bigger shows like Blood and Guts or Double or Nothing. And it was also reported that last week's Blood and Guts show was expected to have 2,500 fans, but ended up drawing 1,600 fans. So I don't really, the only thing I can immediately attribute this to is the burnout factor. Like, you play one venue long enough, people, they don't want to start coming every week. They'll come for the big stuff. It's exactly what happened with TNA down in their the Asylum, which I think was
That's right.
Yeah,
I think it's the Asylum, and then whenever they moved to Florida as well and kind of encountered the same thing at Universal, which is you bring those same fans in every week, they're going to get a little picky and choosy. And the difference is, especially when TNA was at Universal, those tickets were free and drew in kind of casual fans. People still have to pay for these AEW tickets every week. So it doesn't surprise me. I think you're right. Burnout factor, cost factor, not being around. But they're going to do fine. I mean, again, they're going to be out there on the road a little bit. They're getting some positive buzz. The product has been great as of late. Talk about Blood and Guts here in a second. Freaking great show, right? They're drawing in the right demographic. The people that want to go to live things, that 18 to 35, 18 to 49 demographic, they're showing up for an AEW show, right? So it's all on the up and up.
Well, you brought up Blood and Guts there. PWInsider.com, they're reporting that WWE officials, quote, hated the inaugural Blood and Guts match on last week's AEW Dynamite. The report noted that one person in management told Dave Shearer that the Blood and Guts match, quote, set the business back 30 years. However, several active WWE superstars that Shearer spoke to loved the match, since they would, quote, love to do something like that themselves. So the boys, big fans of it. Management, not a big fan of it. And look, I get the frustration there. Vince has spent 20 years trying to make themselves marketable to, a lot of different stuff they were not able to market towards during the Attitude Era. This isn't their lane, but it's their industry, right? So I get the gripe, but there's nothing they can do to stop it.
Well, nothing they can do to stop it. And again, I understand why they would say that, but it really feels like them complaining about something just to pick on the other company, right? You're right. They've done a lot of work over the years to become a PG, Coca-Cola, Vince McMahon's mind, Americana style company that appeals to all demographics. And you've got to admit at some point, if you're not a pro wrestling company, if you are an entertainment or a sports entertainment company, then you can't worry about what the pro wrestling companies are doing. And especially saying something dramatic like, oh my God, this sets us back 30 years. Oh, give me a break. You mean we're back to the 1990s because of one pay-per-view? I just think it's a little bit of drama, and I wish that either, you can't have it both ways, right?
I get it from WWE's standpoint, because they want to go sell to Honda, right? They want to go sell to whoever to go advertise, Ford, whatever. They want to get big money advertisers onto their product. And then you go to Ford and they go, well, we saw the thing on TNT the other night. We don't know if we want to get involved in this business. And now WWE is put in a position to kind of defend themselves to advertisers. And that's why I get the frustration, because to the casual advertising guy, they don't really know if the Canadian Football League is having problems with concussion issues or whatever, and to the NFL kind of the same way back and forth. They just see the vertical. They don't necessarily see the pieces when it comes to advertisers sometimes. So I get the frustration from WWE.
I think that's totally fair. And you're right. The more casual people will not know the difference. But I also do think sometimes WWE likes to kind of pick and choose. And again, the bigger thing here, they set the business back 30 years because of one pay-per-view. We had Impact doing some stuff 10 years ago that I think you could have said set the business back 30 years, right? And I just feels a little bit much, especially when WWE has used this for its own purposes over the years to make lots of money, right?
Talking about WWE touring, yeah, you brought up earlier speculation about when WWE could get back on the road. WrestleVote's reporting that the 2021 WWE SummerSlam pay-per-view may be held earlier than usual this year. So if things work out a certain way, the biggest show of the summer may be held earlier in the year, as WWE is looking to have SummerSlam be the official kickoff to a return to touring for the company. Now, there's still no word on the SummerSlam location, but word now is that there are 3 or 4 locations that are on the table, with one of those having better odds than the other for whatever that is worth. It was previously reported that WWE was considering an outdoor stadium setting in Phoenix, Arizona, or somewhere in Texas as a potential location for the big pay-per-view in August. So WWE coming in here right behind the AEW return to touring, it would seem. I wouldn't be shocked if WWE sees what AEW is doing, especially if AEW does it well, and they start running some random ass shows.
Sure.
They're back on the road here in the next month or so.
I mean, I think we're still a ways away, if ever, of returning to kind of the classic model of house shows every day of the week and kind of doing what they did a few years ago and making money, because house shows just weren't as profitable as they once were, right? But I do think WWE definitely wants to get out there now. But I think they also feel like they can do it with a little bit less criticism too. And SummerSlam, listen, you're going to kick off your return to doing live shows in front of fans again. You've got this Thunderdome for a little bit longer. Milk it for all it's worth if you can. TV ratings on Smackdown have been holding steady. But SummerSlam's the time to do it, dude. You do a big show, create some buzz, and then people start showing back up if people are comfortable. It's a gamble to go out there right now, right? That's one of the things. Give Tony Khan props. It's a gamble. So WWE's playing it safe.
Yeah, and I think that you're right? In this situation, it's interesting because as much as I was kind of hard on WWE for continuing to produce content during the early stages of the pandemic when we had no idea what was going on, I do think that there is something here to maybe slow rolling out as we start to kind of return to normalcy. Because right now, there's kind of this like unprogramming going on in people's heads. Like we've all been living a certain way for so long right now that like being able to act a different way and do different things, it's kind of taking a moment for everybody to kind of find that groove with. So if you can say, hey, everything seems to be going fine, by late July, early August, we're going to do SummerSlam, and then right after that, we're going to start to do live shows. I think that gives you a timeline that's long enough for people to get ready for anticipate what's going to happen here, deliver on it, and feel more comfortable on the other side, as opposed to telling people we're getting back into it right in the moment, if that makes sense.
That unprogramming comment I think is really insightful, Nick, because what if you have been vaxxed, depending on your view on COVID, right? And I'm not here to like smash anybody or, get here to promote vaccines or whatever. I got mine. I encourage you to feel safe and get yours. But what I would say is, for a lot of us who have been living at home and not doing much over the last year, working remotely, I know you've been, I've been, all that stuff, there is a behavior change that we're starting to undergo. But as soon as you start entering into it, at least from my vantage point, it starts feeling freeing in a way. I was the first one to say, I never need to go to the movies again. Like late last year, I'm great watching movies at home. But dude, now that I'm vaxxed, I am damned excited to get out there and go see the new Saw movie next weekend, right? And again, socially distanced, let's keep our space and all this stuff, but I've not been to the movies in forever. And I find myself, I don't know how you are, but I'm finding myself like, oh yeah, I could go do that. And I can go to a brewery and hang out outside and drink some beers. And it's starting to feel like I want to do these experiences in a much bigger way than I thought I would have went. But I was one of the first people to get vaxxed back in March. People are still going through that in the coming months as we get closer to more reopenings.
Dude, I did the wackiest thing yesterday. Like I was on cloud 9 after I got my second dose. I'm like 2 weeks out. You got to start making plans for stuff on Facebook. And they hit me on Facebook with the, hey, do you want to go to an immersive Little Mermaid cocktail experience? I was like, kind of. I mean, Liz loves Disney. I'll surprise Liz. So I spent like whatever, the $70 a ticket. We're gonna get all these cocktails here in July or whatever. And whole immersive Little Mermaid experience. I told Liz about it. She was like, "Oh, that's what you."
That's how you get it's the fancy Dave and Buster's for you and the immersive mermaid cocktail experience. That's what brings it to life.
Look, I'm an idiot, Michael. What can I say? What entertains me, right?
This is no judgment zone, dude. You know that I love it. Yeah, the invisible kazoo over there. I think it's amazing. And people, I give Nick a hard time. Do what you love. This sounds like a hell of a lot of fun. This is the time to do it, right? We're coming back into this year. COVID, hopefully, starting to become a thing of the past. Be with your loved ones, enjoy time together, and just like, remember, life is about this, right? So anyway, that's my motivational speech for the Monday.
All right, we are going to move away from the topic of touring, but if you've enjoyed this opening salva here to touring, hey, do a bunch of those finger like things up. I think that's good for us, right? Fill up the
Not the middle one. Do the other one that comes right here.
moving on to non pro wrestling touring news. So PWInsider.com, they're reporting that WWE has no new rule against its talent mentioning Daniel Bryan by name on WWE programming. So, of course, Daniel Bryan, he lost to WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns 2 weeks ago, forcing him to leave SmackDown. His contract expired that night. He's still contemplating what his next move will be. WWE reportedly, quote, pushing hard to get him to sign a new contract. If WWE was truly looking to distance from Bryan, they are not actively doing so. WWE's handling of Bryan is in stark contrast to someone like CM Punk and rules against mentioning his name on air, where they were like, don't mention Punk, no talk of Punk. Punk is dead to us. Daniel Bryan, though, they're still allowing talent to talk about him, even though it would seem he's not under contract. What do you think about that?
Pick and choose, right? I mean, CM Punk left in a very dramatic fashion. And yes, he left the day after the Royal Rumble during WrestleMania season. That rubbed some people the wrong way. He walked out. It sounds like Daniel Bryan kind of handled his business. He let his contract expire. There was no, and they've done this with so much. Remember, they gave Jon Moxley, aka Dean Ambrose, this huge send-off, right? Whenever he was letting his contract expire, and literally did a special about him in the Shield just months before he debuted at AEW. So I think, this company does pick and choose a little bit how they treat stars on the way out. But I also think it's not entirely arbitrary. Talent that choose to kind of let their contracts expire, and even big names go out the right way, they do treat them with a little more reverence on their way out the door. And I think we have to acknowledge, for all the times we criticize WWE and their handling of talent, the Mickie James situation, Vince McMahon came back and talked to her, and that made her feel better, right? So I think we have to say they do kind of give back a little bit if the talent is willing to kind of sign off from the dotted line and do their thing the right way.
Yeah, and part of me really wonders, like, what Daniel Bryan could do on the other side of this. Like, a couple of years ago, it'd be ridiculous to think that he could go off to New Japan or pop up in an AEW or, whatever. But like, all the signs right now seem to point to the fact that WWE knows they're kind of missing that cool factor at the moment. We've seen the reports about them not wanting to look like the company that's not willing to work like with other companies. So does having somebody with like Daniel Bryan, who you've built a relationship with, who you trust, who would possibly go out and do these things, but also at the same time keep your company's best interest in mind, I do wonder what is out there for Daniel Bryan right now. I wonder if we see him in a New Japan or an MLW or a Ring of Honor. I'm still a little coy on an AEW, but I don't think it's crazy to think that the next time we see Daniel Bryan, it's somewhere else, and WWE is somehow in on it.
I think you're right. And then again, it's what they did with Punk, was give him a little bit of freedom during that summer of Punk and let him, they did dramatic last minute contract signing, but let him sow his wild oats a little bit before bringing him back in and giving him a really big push. I think you could do that with Bryan. I think Bryan is, again, one of those few guys that he leaves and goes to competition. Talent or viewers will follow him, right? Because he is that level of a talent. But I think it's wide open. He has a great relationship in WWE and with that company. His wife does as well. That's a hard thing to leave behind, but it does feel like Daniel Bryan knows he's getting close to the end of his career. And if I'm going to do some of this cool stuff, I only got one more shot. And he's not. He's got to know, Nick, that he can't do all the cool shit he wants to do if he stays under contract in WWE. He'll do some of it, but not as much as he wants to.
Yeah, so I'm very, very interested in what Daniel Bryan does next. And it's weird because like we started off this news item talking about how differently they're handling CM Punk. Like this feels like the CM Punk situation, right? Like the whole, is he under contract? Is he not? They put the title on Punk while he wasn't under contract, and he did like one or two indie appearances. He went down to AEW here in Chicago and put over Gregory Iron, but then they grabbed him, they put him back under contract, and that whole thing was wrong. I mean, it seems really cliche to say, could this be the summer of Bryan, right? But at the same time, this feels a lot more plausible than the summer of Punk for a variety of reasons for me.
I think so. I mean, it's really hard to say because that Punk thing, it was so organic at the time, right? Like they really did capture lightning in a bottle from everything from the pipe bomb promo to the viewers' standpoint on John Cena at the time. And that Money in the Bank match was so special. And so it felt like we didn't know what was going to happen. This feels different from the perspective of Punk was a lot more revolutionary, I think, than Daniel Bryan is. But I also think the difference here is that Daniel Bryan not that Punk isn't a talent, but Daniel Bryan has so many dream match. The indie scene feels different than it did back then, right? Punk showing up at an indie place does not feel the same as Daniel Bryan showing up and not even AEW, but like the Impact Zone. Like it's just a different era for indie wrestling.
I mean, even Daniel Bryan showing up at like Bloodsport with Josh Barnett
Sure.
would be awesome. And I think that but for me, it's like I kind of keep going back to Ring of Honor because like I think him and Jonathan Gresham would just tear it up, and he's got so much history there. And Ring of Honor's got the relationship with New Japan. I could see how that could grow, but then I read that WWE wants to work with MLW, so I don't know any which way.
Oh, they want to work with MLW. Hold on. They want to work with MLW and Bloodsport, but they have issues with AEW Blood and Guts.
Yeah, well, they'll work with MLW. MLW did do MLW is a pretty bloody product. Like they do barbed wire matches, but Bloodsport is DCW. That's not.
That's right. My bad. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So anyway, all right. Well, by the way, thank you to everybody in the comment section right now. Thank you to everybody tuning in. This is way more people than I anticipated watching this show, and that's great. In the comment section, you guys can keep chatting along, and there's a great conversation that I'm watching in my periphery about why there should be the return of the King of the Ring. So you can chime in there or keep listening to Michael and I. Anyway, moving on with the news. Let's look at SmackDown. So we don't do a review. Like we have review shows that we do here at Wrestling Inc. They're after the shows at night. We just kind of look at the highlights. So for those of you who are tuning in and you've never listened to Daily, that's what we talk about newsy things coming out of the show. So, of course, this past Friday night, SmackDown, this was a throwback edition of the show. The show opened with a retro-themed intro and theme song. The set was also upgraded with a version of the iconic SmackDown fist. And I think that's a little liberal, what we wrote on the site, because if by version of the SmackDown, it was a graphic three-dimensional image they superimposed on SmackDown of the fist. How did you feel about that?
It was a letdown. I don't want to downplay this because I know that it's fun to have a different kind of show, and they did ratings, but this was not the throwback SmackDown that people wanted. This felt like, I mean, even some of the other features they had in there with the Ico Pro, all that stuff, they were doing like an early 90s SmackDown, and SmackDown didn't debut till what, 99? Like, if you're going to give us a throwback SmackDown, at least do the Attitude Era SmackDown, not some hybrid of this and early Raw. Like, what the hell?
Yes, I was so thrown off by this. This was very weird. You own the fist, right? Like, I've been watching the WWE Most Wanted Treasures series, and they show the fist down in the warehouse. So we could have all gotten fisted on Friday night,
I mean, it looks like, I know this is part of the Fox weekend, Nick, right? Like, this is like the throwback weekend, but did they have to do a 90s? Like, 99 is still 22 years ago, right? Feel old for a second. You could do a throwback SmackDown that had all those elements in it, right? That had the original SmackDown theme. They used the original SmackDown logo. There was so much missed opportunity with this. It felt so corporate-y and,
Yeah. Well, by the way, thanks for telling me to feel old. I'm 36. I'm kind of like, I'm at that point now where I just like question everything. Like, what is this building towards? Whatever. Anyway, so yeah, the fist was not there. It was there in virtual form. Michael Cole, he wore one of his looks from several years back while Pat McAfee dressed as a younger version of Vince McMahon, which he confirmed on commentary, saying he was dressed like a future billionaire. They also added to the retro theme by airing retro commercials for things like Ico Pro and ice cream bars. And they also aired replays of legendary SmackDown moments from over the years. SmackDown has really been on a roll. I have no issues with SmackDown. SmackDown's a very, very good show. Despite the fact it was a little weird how they tried to create a retro version of SmackDown that never existed. Outside of that, I thought this was good window dressing. I largely enjoyed what they did with SmackDown.
Yeah, it was. And the throwback is fun. It's always a good. I mean, that show's been on the air so long. Again, 21 years. It's just a good time to remember. SmackDown's done a lot for WWE over the years, and I did enjoy the celebration of SmackDown. Especially keep in mind, everybody, SmackDown is the #1 pro wrestling show every week. It's the biggest show they do. So,
okay. Hey, I think I could show messages. Phil, does this show up? Yeah. Doesn't the fist weigh like 5,000 pounds or something? And to that I say, don't care. Look, it's WWE, right? They could do anything. They can get a 5,000 pound fist down to Florida to put up on the goddamn entrance. I know they can. Okay.
Does nobody love the Oval? I love the Fist too. Don't get me wrong. But the Oval was the original. It was Revolution. We had the square Raw and then the Oval for SmackDown.
So anyway, enough about the Fist. Let's talk about the content of SmackDown now. WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns, he announced the return of Jimmy Uso. He came to the ring. He came to the ring to celebrate with Reigns, Jay, and Paul. They had a moment of silence for Daniel Bryan's career, which has come to an end. And it should be noted that Jimmy's been on the shelf since suffering a knee injury in 2020. So this comes along with the following news item here, which I'm going to read this all together. So WWE Hall of Famer Teddy Long, he made a special return for the Throwback show. He announced that Cesaro would earn a Universal title shot from Reigns at WrestleMania Backlash if he could beat Seth Rollins. Cesaro beat Rollins. He's going to face Reigns at WrestleMania Backlash. Cesaro managed to fight off Jimmy, Jay, and Roman to close the show. This will be Cesaro's first ever WWE Championship match. PWInsider.com reporting that Long's appearance was just a one-off for the special, but the roster loved having him at the show. So we can take that part second, but let's get to the first part. Jimmy Uso back. Not a straightforward dynamic, right? Doesn't seem like the whole family is sitting at the table, amicably. A little bit of a Pinter-esque, silence, kind of deal at the table right now with unsaid slights at one another sometimes. What'd you think about the return of Jimmy?
I think it's good. I think it's you got to have some nuance to your storytelling, and WWE doesn't always do that. They're just, this is a good guy, this is a bad guy, and they hate each other, right? So I was happy for them to lean into Jimmy's return, kind of having a little bit of that, hey, things are different now, right? Jay has been here, and he had to earn his allegiance to Roman, right? Like, he had to go out there, and they've had numerous storylines tying Jay into this. Obviously, if you were a real human being and not a TV character, it would be awkward to come back as a former, as a brother, but also as a former tag team partner for this dude. So I like that. And I like that we got a little bit of intrigue, because it would have been real easy for them to say, all right, you're in here now, let's go with it. But I also think it gives something else for Roman Reigns to do. And we're at this era where Roman Reigns, he's beaten some of the biggest people in the world on the biggest stage of them all. How do you keep his story interesting? Well, it's by doing things like this. Is he going to be able to bring Jimmy into the fold? How does this play out on TV in the coming weeks? And he's got a new championship contender to face. Those elements of intrigue as a viewer just make the show so much more interesting.
See, here's the thing is, I think Cesaro has a decent shot at taking this title. Am I crazy?
Depends on how you use Jimmy, right? Like, if you want to use Jimmy in some way and there's a little twist in there and Cesaro comes out and he capitalizes, it could happen. I don't think they're ready for Roman Reigns to lose cleanly to yet, even to Cesaro.
Okay, here, follow me down the rabbit hole, okay, Michael? Because, Cesaro looked incredibly effective on Friday night, right? Like, the show closing, he takes out one Uso at a time and then manages to take out Roman and, looks very strong at the end of the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, had this been next week and in Backlash was this Sunday, I would say no chance, right? Because this is the kind of thing you do to put somebody over before you send him into a pay-per-view to lose. The fact that he looked this strong this week, I bet this Friday on SmackDown, Roman Reigns is going to destroy this man. Him and the brothers, Scar and his hyenas are going to mangle this man on Friday. Bold prediction. And that's what makes me think come Sunday, Cesaro has a pretty decent shot here, because the parabola seems to be to end with, Cesaro beating Roman Reigns. That's how I see the story going.
I mean, there's an expression, past performance is the best indicator of future performance, right? And so WWE does tend to like to load up their guys. If they get beat, if they look dominant on the show right before pay-per-view, they come out and lose. If they get beat up, they come out and win, right? It's that they overcome the obstacles idea. I think, Nick, I see where you're coming from. But again, having Roman Reigns lose, and nothing, Cesaro is a hell of a talent, right? He's just not been built up for long enough, and this is not a big enough stage yet for me to feel like they want to pull the trigger on that moment. I think Cesaro in front of fans, dude, maybe that's SummerSlam, right? Maybe this is just going to draw out the feud for 3 more months like they like to do. I don't know that WrestleMania Backlash is where you pull that trigger, but it could be an interesting twist, and I would dig to see that.
Yeah. I'll read by the way, if you want your comment right on the show, a great way to start it is I agree, Nick. So I agree, Nick. Cesaro could win it, and Roman gets himself in the Money in the Bank match next month to win the briefcase, which is something I hadn't really even thought about with Money in the Bank, right after. Look, I stand by my case for Cesaro. if Roman's going to go back on the hunt to get that title, and they've already established you don't get automatic rematches, that's not a thing anymore. Roman taking that briefcase would be very, very interesting television, especially rolling into SummerSlam, you know?
Well, you've got to have Roman lose in my mind. This is why I'm not convinced by Cesaro, but I could see it depending on how they play it out. Roman's got to lose in a couple of ways because he's been so dominant. Either he loses to an absolutely dominant babyface, right? I don't think Cesaro has been dominant enough yet although he did, Seth Rollins victory, all that jazz, but I don't think he's been dominant enough yet to earn that world championship by becoming just a dominant babyface. Big E could be that in the future, absolutely. So does Cesaro win it through a slightly fluky fashion? Sure, Jimmy running in, something happening there, or to your point, Money in the Bank gives Cesaro that in. He can still win it in a credible fashion, but Roman isn't at his peak when Cesaro cashes in.
Yeah. Also, like I said, that the second part of this I want to talk about, Teddy Long coming back. And PW Insider saying everybody loved having him there. Could this lead to more? I've heard it doesn't sound likely, but who would complain if Teddy Long... I mean, look, they're already... Because Adam Pearce is moving into the director of live events department, right? He's got a lot more responsibility. It's a lot to juggle the actual backstage responsibilities he has with also trying to be an on-screen character. They've got Sonya Deville seemingly coming up in Raw right now as the authority figure there. If you're looking for somebody to put over and Smack, I mean, how you can't get better than Teddy Long. And I know Teddy would do it.
Sure.
It's
just great to hear a guy that has, people love Teddy Long. I think fans love him because he was such a great character on screen for so many years. And we poke fun at him, but I've always felt like it's in a loving way, right? Like, yeah, the holla holla, we're going to have a triple threat match, triple threat tag team, whatever. That's always been fun, right? But I also think there is some level of Teddy's been around the business for a hell of a long time and he's done it all, right? And having him there is nothing but an addition to that company. I think from WWE's vantage point, they kind of see him as been there, done that. I don't know that we would need to bring him back for anything, but it does feel good just for Teddy to be there, for the fans to love it, for the roster to love it, because Long has earned all of that respect and more.
Teddy is just so iconically SmackDown, right?
Sure.
Like, there's something like there's the fist and there's Teddy Long. Like you have those two things, that's a SmackDown for me, right?
It's like a recipe, right? Like what's the recipe for the perfect episode?
Teddy Long can still do that job and
Sure.
be very, very good at it. So I have no issues with them if they wanted to bring Teddy back and put him in that role. All right. Also, we found out that WWE has announced that the SmackDown tag titles, they're going to be defended at the WrestleMania Backlash pay-per-view. The match is going to see Rey Mysterio and Dominic challenge Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. The Mysterios defeated Otis and Gable on the April 23rd SmackDown show, which apparently moved them into the number one contender spot for the straps. Well, that's compelling, right? So regardless, I think that I was looking this morning about Ray, or not think, I know, I was reading a recap of Ray talking about how much it would mean to be the first father-son tag team champions in WWE history. We have a live chat room now, so I don't need to Google this. You all feel free to vet that fact, okay? So if you want to go check and hunt down, because I feel like that weirdly feels like it can't be true to me, but I guess it could be true. Ray and Dominic, the first father-son tag team champions. It would be a big moment. And as much
maybe he meant the first ever WWE SmackDown tag team father and son champion.
I don't know. It's just a weird fact. But it doesn't feel right. But I'll trust it till it's disproven. So anyway, I hope they take these titles. It would be great for them. Ray is, again, you talk about iconically SmackDown. Ray is, in many ways, iconically SmackDown. Him and Dominic on a title run heading into SummerSlam. I'm all about it. And as much as I like Roode and Ziggler individually as performers, this Dirty Dogs tag team, and maybe it just needs more time. Maybe it'll be like The Bar. Over time, I will learn to respect and love it. But they've had a while now, and they don't light me up as a tag team at the moment.
I think they need more time, but also a better name. And they've both been such great singles wrestlers for so long. And I think both of them kind of represent a certain level of kind of uncaptured talent from WWE main roster. Both of these guys should be multi-time world champions. In my personal opinion, Robert Roode, former NXT champion, Dolph has been a world champion at one point. So I think that's part of it for me. This move here, though, with Rey Mysterio, Dominic, this is what felt like was going to happen last month at WrestleMania. They were this close to it happening. And then they did that tag team title match on the Friday before WrestleMania as part of SmackDown WrestleMania. And so I'm wondering if there was some original plans in there to kind of give them this special moment as part of the main card and just didn't have time to do it. So of course, Backlash will be if I were a betting man, bet all your life savings on these two walking out of there with the title. I don't see how you would pull the story up and not give them that special moment.
Unless it's like a screw job finish, right? They want to drag this along, right? Oh, we want to see these 4 people work together for the next 3-4 months, whatever. So, lastly, here from the world of SmackDown, PWInsider.com reporting Aleister Black initially had a vignette that was set to air on Friday's episode, but was pulled last minute due to time constraints. I really like Aleister Black. There's a lot you can do with Aleister Black. Him reading this book, the reading rainbow gimmick is no good for me. Like, I saw Finn Balor do this less than a year ago, where he was doing the whole origin story of the Demon. We've kind of seen it with T and Shaw, something stylistically very similar in NXT as well. I don't get it, man. Like, this guy is saddled with awful vignettes before he gets back to the ring every single time. I don't get it.
And they do this. They're kind of leaning into stuff they've done before. WWE is, right. They're kind of bringing back up old ideas. But my biggest issue with all of this, Nick, it's the same issue I had when we got into the later days of the Firefly Funhouse, is they overproduce the crap out of stuff like this. And the more and more somebody like Aleister Black, the more and more those Firefly Funhouse segments felt like they were ran through the corporate machine, they start feeling a lot less authentic and a lot less meaningful to us as fans, right? And I mean, it's everything from the way they edit them together, from the choices in camera angles. You can tell this was done by a company with lots of equipment and all this stuff. And it just doesn't tell a very interesting story about this character. Aleister Black needs to feel like some kind of mysterious force. That's what his great pull was in NXT. And the more you overexpose him, you're starting to lose that magic about what made him click in the first place.
All right, lastly here I should say before we get to Jeff Jarrett, that's if you're in audio form after this next news item, you'll hear me talking to Jeff Jarrett after this next news item. If you want to pause or jump away and go watch the Jeff video if you're watching in replay, it's not live right now, but it will be shortly. Anyway, this most confusing part of the new dynamic is explaining how the videos go out, but whatever, we're on a roll. All right, so lastly here, the controversial Booker T versus Triple H feud that led to a match at WrestleMania 19 was not featured on Booker T's A&E Biography series on Sunday night. However, there were previous plans for the storyline to be included in the 2-hour documentary, according to writer and professor David Dennis Jr. in a pair of deleted tweets. Now, Dennis Jr. took to Twitter to reveal that he gave lengthy interviews talking about the WrestleMania 19 storyline, but knew that portion was going to get cut from the documentary. His other interviews on Booker T's career did make the show. Of course, a lot of people had issues with this particular program, and especially the fact that Booker T did not win this particular program. Very foolish. Thoughts on this being left out of the biography, Michael?
It's a much bigger issue here. This is not the first time controversy around AEW's series has come up in recent weeks. I go back to, I think last week, your show with Sean Waltman's new podcast here, Pro Wrestling for Life, right? He made comments about the way they represented Macho Man in that documentary and kind of said some unsavory things because it feels like there is an agenda behind this show, and it feels like that agenda is WWE. So, of course, WWE would not want to bring up this kind of spotty, let's call it what it is, racist storyline dealing with one of their higher-up executives. But that's the problem. The problem is, how in the world can AEW make what they consider a documentary series if WWE has this much influence and flex over? And I don't know for a fact that it was pulled at the behest of WWE, but there are a lot of signs in the foundation that WWE has some sway and some say in what comes into the final form of these shows every week.
All right, with that, if you are listening to the podcast, you're going to hear Jeff Jarrett. If you're watching us in video form, we're about to jump into the mailbag, and you can watch Jeff Jarrett after we finish here live. All right, and with that, welcome to the end of the show, everybody. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. Again, this was the first time we have done the news portion of the show live on all the wrestling channels, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and I'll say this, Michael, I'm blown away. I thought we were going to have like 15 people here. I think there's like 300. I think we're outdrawing Impact this week.
Wow.
Monday, we've already outdrawn Impact.
Thank you guys for joining us. All of you out there. I mean, this is a fun ride to do this live. First time kind of jumping in there and doing it, but really appreciate you all jumping in the chat room. And it's great to see your reactions in real time because we never get that. So it's awesome.
Yeah, and give all the thumbs up and stuff and the hearts and the whatever, the gimmicks out there you press to show your love and support for the show. So This is, and by the way, thank you to Jeff Jarrett and Tony Clifton for appearing on the show today. What a confrontation between those two. If you're watching this live, you haven't seen the Jeff interview yet, go watch the Jeff interview. The last 3 minutes, Tony Clifton appears off camera and really says some profane things to Jeff that I wouldn't talk to a Hall of Famer like that, but yet Tony did. So
yeah. You get them worked up, man. Foul language is a part of the game, is what I learned.
All right, so we're going to dive into the mailbag now. Every day, Monday through Friday, before we go live here on the daily, we go over to the @WInc Daily account, WINC Daily. That is the Twitter account to follow. We go over there and we put up a question that you all can, or a poll that you all can vote in. You can leave feedback to, and then we read that feedback and we read the results here to wrap the show up. So today's poll question is, if John Cena does return for a SummerSlam match, which person would you like to see him wrestle at SummerSlam? This all stems from John Cena, who by the way, John Cena's random Instagram posts are intended to be open to interpretation. They rarely fail in starting a conversation, but on Saturday, Cena struck again, posting a picture of the WWE logo as expected. Fans interpreted this post meaning he's coming back to WWE. Now, it should be noted he's currently in Vancouver filming as Peacemaker as part of the Suicide Squad spinoff. The 8-episode HBO Max series is expected to premiere in January. An early report noted that the Peacemaker crew is going to wrap up shooting in Canada by June, possibly allowing Cena to return to WWE for a SummerSlam program. So there's a chance here, it sounds like, Michael, he could be here. We have over 400 votes here in just the last hour. 49.2% say Roman Reigns, 26% say Bobby Lashley, 13.9% some kind of other write-in, and only 10.9% said Randy Orton. I thought Randy would do better because Randy's just on fire right now, and we've seen him and Cena a bunch of times, but at this point in their career, I just think it would be special. Regardless, I voted Roman Reigns. Who'd you vote for?
I voted for Roman Reigns as well. I mean, Randy Orton seems like the go-to here because they have had such an illustrious. I mean, they unified the titles at one point, right? It's a pretty great rivalry over the years, but that feud has been played out, and it does feel like at this stage in his career, John Cena should kind of do the Rock thing or the Hulk Hogan thing or whatever else. Roman Reigns, John Cena had this feud a couple of years ago, and it was really good. If you remember, some really personal shots fired back and forth. I would love to see that now I think John Cena comes back kind of as the babyface, right? In Roman Reigns in this new role, man, you could have some great promos. Paul Heyman's in the mix. And I think it would really continue to elevate Roman. Who else elevates Roman right now? Well, hell yeah, John Cena does.
All right, well, I'm going to read some feedback from the Twitter account. If you guys also want to write in who you want to see Cena face at SummerSlam in the comments section, feel free to do that. We will throw a couple up here on the screen after we finish the Twitter feedback. So first of all, at Kareem Taylor, I need it to be Roman Reigns. Needs it. Like oxygen. Needs it. At the Line Drive, Cross. I've seen Roman and Bobby, and Cena isn't the way I would go with Bobby for a big match. Cena and Cross could legitimately elevate NXT in terms of viewership. And, there's a couple write-ins here for Killer Cross, which surprised me. I just don't think Cross is at a level yet for John Cena. I think in a little while he will be, but he's still only a really big name to harder core fans. I don't know that the casual fan really knows who Cross is and would be ready for that feud or match.
And that's it, man. If you're bringing back John Cena, it's not to do this kind of NXT dream match that some of us hardcore fans have. It is to appeal to a more casual audience who just saw Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, and now they want to see this dude back in a wrestling ring. Yeah. You got to have a broader name, in my opinion.
Not to say that I am against the John Cena Open Challenge down at NXT for like 8 weeks. I mean, if you just let John Cena have matches with like 6 to 8 guys on the roster just to say you did it. And look, I'm not against that. I'm just saying for SummerSlam, and you say this is the return. This is the big ta-da, the return to live events and touring. You got to have John Cena up against somebody big, marquee. For sure.
Can I give you one more name just to cover one through these? I'm having a little fun with this. John Cena, Daniel Bryan.
John Cena, Daniel Bryan. I thought about that too. Like Daniel Bryan coming back. I mean, you can go all the way back to the beginning with the Nexus, right? And how Daniel Bryan got fired, right, on that night that they first attacked, John Cena for choking Justin Roberts. I mean, you could tell that story, especially if Daniel Bryan went out and was it MLW or Ring of Honor or whatever, and making some noise, and John Cena comes back. I was like, who is this guy? Kind of, I don't know, blend the realities. So, all right. At IB Nick is Matt. It's weird. I'll put him with Ali. That can never a star making match like Taker and Hardy. I have no idea what that means, but John Cena versus Mustafa Ali, I would be all for it, but I just, again, not for SummerSlam. Doesn't seem to have that marquee value.
I agree.
With Bittersweet CL91, he just shared a GIF of Edge doing the "You Can't See Me" to John. You know, a bit of a rehash, right? Kind of like Randy Orton, but who wouldn't? I mean, John Cena Edge, that's a marquee match all day.
I love it. And what do you do with Edge now? He's kind of moved out. Edge should be doing some of these big matches since he's not doing the fullest of schedules. I love it. Love it.
Yeah. At Coffee Goblin, oh man, that should be my handle. Put over a promoted NXT talent like Cross on the right-in for Cross. At Kron Shaw, we've seen the other three. Cena versus Cross, another Cross right-in. At Die Sporting Net, Wild Cards, King of Bros, Riddle. I see him and Orton. They're going to be doing their own thing for a little bit,
Yeah, I don't think it does much for. I mean, yeah, it could, but it does. It feels a little bit out of left field, Him and Bro.
At Luke Kell 8, Drew McIntyre, so John Cena can put him over. I did think about McIntyre for that reason.
The dynamic's weird. John Cena, I think, would have to come back as a heel, but maybe McIntyre is fired up after these losses, and he kind of comes back with a little more edge. And I don't know. I'm convinced Cena's got to be the good guy in this, whatever he comes back in, right?
You would think so, especially right now, but it's such a pivotal time. But like John Cena coming back and, pulling a pair of brass knucks out to pop Drew McIntyre on Raw to like start SummerSlam. I mean, if we're looking to get people talking about the company and SummerSlam and get excited, I mean, who's going to be there day to day helping you make more money right now? Drew McIntyre. Look, would John Cena heel turn has been talked about and bandied and dreamed about for a long time now. I don't know if this is the moment, but if you're looking to jumpstart some big business,
could be
pop him in the nuts.
In the nuts, knuckles to the nuts. That's his new finisher.
Yeah, exactly. At Riz Capra, Johnny Gargano again, just doesn't see marquee. Another one here from typical Eva fan for Killer Cross. At Road Dog 680, Keith Lee. I'd love to see it, but I have no idea where Keith Lee. Another write-in here from Aztec AK780 for Cross. Man, a lot of Cross write-ins. One here from Jason Sherbis, Aleister Black. We kind of already talked about Black. Drew 227, Cross. At Royal De La Rosa 2, Cross. At Smart Event, Mansoor. Don't see it. Not right now.
He's undefeated, right? He lost that one match. I mean, he's undefeated.
Maybe that could be a big marquee match for the first return to Saudi Arabia. Mansoor versus John Cena. And I'm not kidding.
No.
I'm kidding,
God, there'd be a lot of money. I mean, you could pay John. Would John Cena do it though? Right? How much money would it take at that point?
I mean, John Cena, I'm sure that they would pay him a lot of money for a Saudi match. So I don't count it out. At NBYRNEO1, Adam Cole. At the Buscat, voted Bobby because Raw needs all the help it can get. Also, doesn't he have some unfinished business with Bray Wyatt? And yeah, he does. I thought about including Bray Wyatt, but where's Bray Wyatt? Like,
is he relevant today in WWE anymore?
I think that he'd have a better shot at wrestling Alexa, to be honest.
I'm looking forward to the Bray Wyatt return to NXT cycle that a lot of talent get whenever their main roster run kind of pans out, and we'll see Bray Wyatt in NXT here in the near future.
At Mike Jones, another one for Cross, and then lastly here from Say Hello Chico, Eva Marie. I just don't see it happening. All right, let me see here. I'll dive into the comment section here real quick. We have here. Let's do Cena. Okay, Jeff Ryburn, Cena Reigns. At Alexa, Alex A, John Cena versus Drake Matt. Just don't see it. Just don't think it's going to happen. Let's see. At Jeff Ryburn, if no Rock, let Cena break the table and beat Reigns for the title. Let's see here. At Trevor Richards, if Vince don't stop misusing his stars and have more wrestling and more badder storylines, the ratings will go way worse to where they be lucky to get Impact Wrestling ratings by October of next year with a series of emoji faces.
I don't know what to say to that one.
Better get their act together. That's all I have to say.
I know we're bumping up against time, Nick, but I got to say this idea of Cena beating Reigns before losing to Reigns to capture that final illustrious championship, man, that's got some good storyline written all over it.
All right. And then lastly here, I'll read one from Michael Thomas Banshit's SummerSlam 21, Orton and Riddle versus Edge and Cena. And look, I don't look some kind of super. It was SummerSlam where they did the Rock and Cena teaming up against, what was it? Miz, R-Truth. It's somebody else, wasn't it? It was like a 3-on-2, I think.
Oh man, I forgot about this match. Rock and Cena versus Miz and R-Truth. Survivor Series 2011.
Okay.
Yep.
Survivor Series. I thought it was SummerSlam. Who'd they take on?
You were right, Miz and R-Truth.
Oh, it's just the two of them?
Yep.
Oh, I thought there was a third man in that. Wow. You know, I've bashed this thing around a little bit over the years, but there's still some stuff rolling around up there.
The Awesome Truth, as they were once a tag team, which I completely forgot about. The Miz has got to have a record for most tag team partners he's been in big matches with, right? Like,
yeah,
it's incredible.
Right. Weigh in the comment section. Hey, thank you all so much for tuning in to the first ever live daily. We'll be doing this Monday through Friday, always at noon Eastern. We don't usually go an hour. This is a little longer. We just had a ton of news today. But come back here. We will talk the news tomorrow. I'll be joined by Second City's EJ Cameron, also over on the Wrestling Inc. YouTube channel. We're going to drop a mystery interview. I'm doing another interview this afternoon, so I don't know if the interview I had planned tomorrow will be the one I release, but we have new interviews that go up on the Wrestling Inc. YouTube channel and over on the Wrestling Inc. Daily podcast Monday through Friday. And of course, if you like the Wrestling Inc. Daily, you can follow WrestlingInc.com. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're also over on YouTube, where Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, weekends after pay-per-views, we go live with the Wrestling Inc. podcast. And of course, again, Monday through Friday, noon Eastern, we now go live with the Wrestling Inc. Daily. I'll be joined here tomorrow by Second City's EJ Cameron as well to talk the news the past 24 hours. Michael, what do you want to put over here to wrap up the show today?
I just want to say again, thank you all for joining us. This was a ton of fun. Nick, thank you for having me. I know we do this every Monday, but I appreciate this first debut. Seeing you while we did this podcast was a lot more fun. You know, we typically just do the audio version, so it was awesome, man. I enjoyed it. Give me a shout out. I appreciate everybody kind of listening along. You can follow me on Twitter. I am at The Real Wiseman.
Yes, and I am at Nick_Houseman. By the way, for those of you at home, I'm holding up some Okada bucks. I just wanted to see how they would look on green screen because they are also green. Looks weird. All right. I am at Nick_Houseman over on Twitter. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And remember, if you winked, you didn't miss it.